It's Real Talk, Episode 9, Man vs. Nature. And I'm your host, Al the Movie Lion. On today's show, filmmaker Domonic Smith took the river in to help me review Anaconda. Jimmy the Toucan flies back and dodges falling horses to score The Revenant. And New York comedian Matt Somerstein makes his Real Talk debut to review The Edge. Now quick, leave a like, subscribe, and look out for bears. Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget. Is a form of entertainment successful if the desired reaction isn't achieved, but an equally strong reaction of another variety is? If your answer is yes, then the film Anaconda might be the slithery king of a subgenre called accidental comedies, because this hokey horror action brings the laugh so consistently, you might think you're watching a satire. The cast of the film is incredible, considering a contemporary movie with the same names would be an enormous global draw. But it's Anaconda's main character that falls short of achieving what Bruce the Shark did in Jaws, and that's proving less is more. We see every inch of this sometimes practical, sometimes CGI snake, and from inside to out, the beast is never frightening. It's worth noting that the issues I have with the Anaconda's performance are the same issues I have with a lot of modern CGI characters, and that's an inability to translate weight. Anytime we cut to the animated snake, it looks to be floating instead of existing, which is actually an appropriate analogy for the film's plot. This is a romp that is built on tropes and quips, comes with a cast that is incredibly easy to watch, and doesn't seem to have any ill intentions. So, is it good? Lucky for me, I'm best friends with a very talented director and editor who is going to help me score 1997's Anaconda. Domonic Smith, thanks for coming aboard, and don't feel like you need to do any, bad Scarface impressions or anything, okay?
Thanks for having me, Al.
Obviously, you and I have been friends for a long time. We've had plenty of unrecorded chats about movies, so it only made sense to get you over here and in the studio. So I appreciate you making the trip. You've dabbled quite a bit in the horror genre. What was your relationship like with Anaconda prior to this conversation? Did you see it when you were younger?
It was one of my first popcorn movies before I understood what a popcorn movie was. It's funny, they knew what they were doing, but with putting Ice Cube in there, it's just, this is somebody who I know from my, what it feels like my neighborhood. I know this dude. That was a big draw for me as a kid, getting to see him in a role that wasn't just the Black experience film. And it was cool to see someone who not only looked like me, but felt like the people who I knew from where I grew up, be in this very obscure space, because I was so used to seeing films that were just a full white cast. It's just a full white cast, and I'm just used to seeing things that way. And if it is a Black character, it's very much so just the stereotype and very small role. That was one of the biggest draws for me being younger and getting to experience this film. Also, for me as a kid, it's funny you point out the effects, because those were huge to me when I was younger. Snakes in general wasn't a thing that was on the forefront of my mind when I was younger, growing up in Michigan. So this was also getting to get a peek at just a different type of wildlife that I didn't think a lot about.
Not necessarily a similar ecosystem in Kalamazoo to the Amazon, fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely not. We got deer up there by the droves, so it was cool to get just a different view, just tropical space and all of that, because by that time I had been nowhere. I'd been in Michigan and Missouri. Those were the two spaces, so I didn't know much.
I mean, it's PG-13, so it's safe to say that it was obviously made for as wide an audience that it could catch, but it does seem like kids is who this would have really resonated with. And yeah, that sense of adventure. I mean, I'm a lion, I grew up in the jungle, but even I remember watching this and thinking, yeah, what a cool place to see, just a cool place to see an adventure, the haze on the water and whatnot.
Just style grows, evolves, and changes. So it almost still kind of feels disrespectful if I attempt to apply what I know filmmaking to be today against, and for sure, we got films where it's man, that aged really well. But sometimes it almost feels like luck with it aging really well, because at the end of the day, it's just the artist trying to portray their vision for whatever film that they're making. You just get lucky that it still fits and lands within the time because you have no clue where filmmaking is going. So with this, like I just had to work hard on like separating nostalgia, but also understanding the growth of cinema and like even the way that an actor will approach a role today, but also this being a popcorn film. So it was a tough time to like think of all of that and still be able to watch and retain this film. I never broke down Anaconda, you know?
Well, that's what Al's here for. So let's start with the plot of the movie because when we're talking about plot, that isn't something and I bring it up because you talk about things that age well, versus don't age well. And I think that if you saw this when you were 7 in 1997 or you saw this and you were 7 now, you're probably going to react the exact same way to the plot, just like an adult who saw this in 1997 versus an adult who might see this in 2027. So just talking about the plot, and I'm curious again from somebody who has written and directed a lot of action and kind of horror and suspense. What did you think? What did you think of the effectiveness of...
It's funny. I wrote down notes for just like different plot holes and stuff. Why did it take 3 people to tie 2 winches? Why are 3 of you guys in the water? Wait, the snake took 3 headshots and like he still like is coming back. And then I was like, wait, were there 2 snakes? Because at the end,
Yeah,
the snake no damage to those headshots he had taken. Why didn't the tranquilizer work? How did John Voight take the tranquilizer and we from his POV saw him going unconscious and they're like the tranquilizer fell out of him, but he's still got enough in him to make him pass out to have time to drown. How is he still alive? And then the last note I had, which was almost a connection to the film 8 Mile, where it's like it is a line from 8 Mile where the battle is, this is a horror film, but a black guy doesn't die in this movie. That was for Ice Cube.
I love it. No, well, this concludes our segment of Dom on the plot. I love it. Dom on the plot.
But honestly, also, I forgot that it was a documentary team trying to like film this documentary. That immediately gave me a connection. So now I'm just like looking at these different characters. The director, J-Lo was the director, right? Of the documentary.
Oh, I was under the impression it was the Eric Schultz character, but maybe I'm totally wrong. Because now that I think of it, I don't know what her role would have been if not the director.
Eric like totally useless, by the way. If I like that we can
John Voight can perform a tracheotomy. That's the only reason
that was one of my notes. Is like when it happened, I was like, shit, this was the first movie I ever saw a tracheotomy. Like this was the first time I had ever seen it. And every movie after that, it would always take me back to Anaconda. Who has a pen and stabbing it? And I'm just like, Anaconda.
And none of those other movies have the courage to include a trach poke. Just a real nasty trach poke. And this might be the only movie I've ever seen one of those. But the plot, it does have some plot holes in it, which is fair to say.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that aspect of it. Just really connecting with all of these different characters. The sound person, like, her directing and just their viewpoint on what their goal was. And one of the things that, at least for me personally, that fell a little short is y'all are missing so many like dope film opportunities right now as a filmmaker. And I'm like, look, I get it. Ice Cube, like the camera is bulky and like all of that shit. So to like get it going again and all of that is a lot. But if you are a true documentary filmmaker, y'all are witnessing shit that nobody has ever witnessed, and there is no type of footage that exists for this. And at no point your second nature doesn't go to pick up that camera. They weren't just like, man, I gotta capture this footage. Like Ice Cube, like, nah, fuck, like, no. Like one of the most visually interesting parts of the entire film, where we see the anaconda come out of the water and John Voight is like trying to reel him in, and we got the lights and stuff going. For me, it was probably visually one of the best moments of the entire film. And at no point was Ice Cube like, I gotta film this. This is crazy. And they're still holding on to their humanity, though. They aren't so far pushed towards being a filmmaker or getting the great shot that they don't forget that these are human lives being weighed right now.
I don't know that that was my takeaway in terms of the reasoning. I think if I had to inject logic into what I think was probably just a light character building, I think everybody on the film crew of Anaconda, I'm not sure how many of them had ever been on a documentary film set, so I don't think it might just...
And I have to separate all of that, and I have to just watch the film for what it is and what I'm receiving.
No, I appreciate that, and I got to know then, what would you give the plot 1 out of 10?
I give it a 7, and honestly, I'm probably giving it a high 7. It's also me saying everything about just weighing everything that I acknowledged before, and also not really attempting to try to figure out what the filmmaker was going for. Any of that is just me receiving the information and filtering it. So I give the plot a 7.
Pure response. I love it. That's what we're after here. Well, that puts the characters and performances, and you touched on it a minute ago, you know, some of maybe, because I think the decision you're talking about that you wrestled with of maybe wanting to see the filmmakers be a little more opportunistic as filmmakers, and that didn't really exist in the characters. You also mentioned that as a youngin, you were really responding to the fact that you saw Cube in this movie.
I cracked up laughing, and it was probably like 5-6 minutes in, and we introduced Cube for the first time, and he's like looking through a binocular, and J-Lo asked him something, and he's like, "Today was a good day." And look, he said it. He said it like for y'all to want to have me disconnect Ice Cube with the character that is Danny, you are also immediately making me realize this Ice Cube.
I think they want you to always remember that's Ice Cube, because they're not really giving him anything more to do than just be Ice Cube. And maybe that is points for directing, because I think you do have to make that choice when you have a really recognizable star or athlete or somebody who's coming into the film. How do you handle that?
But what I respected for like his performance, or and just the director directing him the way that he did. I don't know Cube personally, but I know Ice Cubes from my childhood, from the place that I grew up. Let's say my Uncle Mike, who would be Ice Cube. My Uncle Mike, his nickname is Spike, because he'll get you on the vice grip. What would my Uncle Mike be like in this scenario? Truly, that's what it felt like. Witnessing Ice Cube be Ice Cube was me getting to see somebody that I know in this position, and a lot of decisions that he were making outside of him being a filmmaker is stuff that my Uncle Mike would do and say and respond to. I appreciate knowing a lot of Ice Cube's background to know that, like, all right, I get it. Like, if I'm thinking about my Uncle Mike, it felt really authentic to the situation. Some real hood shit responses.
I think it would be a really bad move to ask him to try to be something he's not. Which I don't want to say they're asking Jennifer Lopez to be something she's not, but she's definitely is her character designed to be anything more than eye candy?
I would say no. A lot of her performances really fell to the background for me. Even though, like, you know, she's our lead, I didn't always care what she had going on.
It's difficult to care when the characters aren't fleshed out. It's difficult to care when you're being presented someone who's basically playing a version of themselves, so to speak. They're a star. We're just saying, oh, there's J-Lo. But we're not giving anything else. And the things we are given don't feel off. I would never believe for a second, no offense, Mr. Schultz, but I'm not exactly that she's in love with him. And then when you juxtapose it with this insane character and this insane performance from Jon Voight, it does slip right into the background. But unfortunately for her, she's not really given anything to do stand out other than be J-Lo and soaking wet, tight clothes. And that's not her fault. Yeah, for me, I had to kind of shout that out as a little bit of a... Why not? Why not develop her character a little bit more if you're going to put the...
I had made a note, like, kind of yelling, Danny Trejo! To see him so young, and not like it really mattered for any character development or anything like that. I was just excited to see Danny Trejo. I enjoyed Jon Voight's character. People will point out, like, just certain certain accents and stuff, and like this accent is trash. Like who told him this was just in any film? And I'm not well versed in like what sounds like an authentic accent, and unless I really take my like, I could tell you an authentic Czech accent, but that's it because that's my wife. So I wasn't even sure. Like I had to just like let the accent of it go away, and me just kind of enjoy the snakiness of his ass the entire time.
Oh, I mean, look, I said it in my open. I mean, I think this movie plays really well as a comedy, and John Voight's character is hysterical. I mean, he's for me easily the most entertaining part of
Yep.
this movie. There's a moment sort of early in, I don't know, maybe towards the midway point, where he's just staring at J-Lo with this look on his face like the Fonz had a stroke. Like he's just like, I'm like, is he De Niro? Like, what is he doing? But it just holds on him staring, and it hysterically cuts back to J-Lo with just this like, can I help you? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I want to believe that he was just doing whatever he wanted and the director wasn't getting in the way. Who knows? But yeah, I just, if we're talking characters and performances, John Voight, there's no way we can't bring him up considering he's doing this movie that nobody's doing ever again. Or
It's the scene where J-Lo tries to like put the moves on him, and I was just thinking when I'm watching this, I'm like, what gave you the impression that like he was looking for? I get it. A man is like, this looks like a man on the mission of missions. At no point in my thought process would I think maybe he just needs some ass.
this guy, this gentleman with the ponytail living deep in the Amazon searching for a 40-foot phallic object, I know what'll cure him.
Yep, got it. Y'all just needed some type of sex appeal to kind of break this up for a little bit, remind us that J-Lo is in this role. Copy that. They have the moment where like she gets close to him, she's like touching him, and he's like, oh yeah, like I haven't been with a woman and like whatever. And he kisses her, he sees the reflection, and he's like, oh, y'all thought y'all got me? Like, no, and then flips around and then steals another kiss from her. Did you really need that? Like, what is this, a power move or something? Like, let me get one more in because this probably will never happen again.
Characters and performances.
Yeah, I landed on a 6, and it came up to a 6 because of John Voight and Ice Cube for those reasons that I listed. I even honestly I liked what is it, Jonathan Hyde. His stuff was like over the top in the beginning. But there was just one moment that he had with Ice Cube that just made me smile in the moment. It seemed like they were trying to show some growth between those two, but also using this as a plot device to have Ice Cube learn how to drive the ship or drive the boat. But it was this cool moment where Ice Cube is fucking playing his music. He's like bumping to his music, and Jonathan Hyde is like hitting balls off of the edge of the boat, and they kind of have this like confrontation between each other. And then we fast forward, and now all of this stuff has happened, and now they're in the boat together, and Ice Cube kind of asks about like driving the boat and like how easy or hard it is. He's like, man, I'll teach you real quick. Differences attract in this moment.
As is often the case, as I'm sure you can attest on film crews where people from all over different places come together, and usually that first day, maybe first week, a little rough. By the end of the show, everybody's family, and you get a little bit of that in here. We're moving on to visual storytelling. I know you mentioned earlier some of the sequences, or one in particular where the snake is coming out of the water and they're attempting to sort of fish for it and reel it in. Maybe I should just ask, the conclusion of the film, your kind of typical tropey horror where you think the snake's dead, the snake comes back, you think the snake's dead, the snake comes back in. How did you think that was all sort of handled specifically visually?
It was still a big deal to see certain things that you would typically only see animatronic style, and some of the stuff that they did, they wouldn't really be able to pull off animatronically. Like when Westridge jumps off the cliff and the snake jumps down and wraps him around. It was a very cool moment. It was a very cool, if I focus on the moment and what they were going for visually, this is dope. This is very dope because I think he's about to get away and they take it from me immediately. And so what they were going for, I loved, but obviously, like, I'm watching the VFX, and it's just like, yeah, no, like, even the lighting is kind of off on like that snake in that moment.
Yeah, the textures are not kind and the on the CG. Well, let me ask you, what about just the design of the snake? It looks very goofy to me. Like the way the head of the snake design is, I don't know if they were trying to go for some ultra realism, which I cannot imagine that's at any point was what this movie was going for. But I just feel like, why not make the snake look scarier? Like it looks silly. And I think that again, even in 97, this is like I said, it's nothing to do with the CGI.
One, it made me, I was like, man, I don't think I ever really just like went out of my way and looked up what like anacondas like look like. So if I'm watching the movie called Anaconda, I have to take that this is what an anaconda looks like. I wasn't really bothered by it. I personally have the same level of issue with animatronics that I have with VFX that don't really match up. And if I can recognize that it's an animatronic, I can appreciate all of the work that went into it and like how much effort goes into having it create these different movements. But also, I'm like, don't look real. Doesn't look real to me. But I will say one of the coolest shots, and I made a note about it. One of the coolest shots that they have in the film is the POV of the snake's throat. That I thought was a pretty fun shot. We all, we only get for a brief moment. The other thing that I did enjoy is just the POV of the snake from the camera. It feels like even in the opening, it feels like we're just doing this cool Dutch tilt moment because we're trying to make the audience feel off kilter and things are weird. And then it overshoots it and it's like, oh, this is the snake. Getting to see them revisit those moments was really cool. And they had a moment towards the end where we're completely upside down and we don't know, unless you are really paying attention to the gravity and like the way the leaves are looking, doesn't feel like we're upside down until we completely flip around because we're looking at the reflection of the water and all of that. And I thought that was a really cool and interesting moment.
So what are we giving it then? 1 out of 10.
It's landing at a 6 for me.
6.
Because there was also nothing that really, it just wasn't mind-blowing cinematography. It did come up to a 6 because I was also taking into account how hard it would be for them to capture a lot of the shots that they were capturing, which was impressive when, I kind of took it in.
Hey, fair enough. I do think you're being a little too kind. This is 1997. This is an incredibly big budget production. So I'm not sure how much they would have been struggling to do a little bit more than the paint by numbers cinematography, which is absolutely what you're getting in this. There are some nice sort of wide shots that are clearly shot on location, but I will say it was very obvious to me when they were pretty much always on a studio, whenever they're in the water, under the water. I mean, they do a decent job of throwing a twig or two in the foreground to remind you, but otherwise it a lot of it felt like kind of a classic Hollywood, Creature from the Black Lagoon style. Yeah. And so moving on, we got the 6 locked in. Use of sound, Dom. We already mentioned that it was a good day for Ice Cube. We had in there, but not really a lot of other attempts, to weave in actual pop music or anything. This is a pretty standard 1997 sort of action thriller. I'm being very kind when I say that. But what did you think about the music? And then I really want to know, what did you think about the sounds of that snake?
What's funny is I really enjoyed the score. I enjoyed the score it just felt like classic Disney. Like it just felt like this adventurous approach, which unfortunately, again, that does bring in a little bit of nostalgia within me. Like Indiana Jones, or like it made me feel like I was about to get on a ride at Universal Studios. So that made it fun, but I did enjoy a decent amount of just sound design decisions that they chose to make. The snake this is what you guys are going for with mixing the sound of a few different snakes, but also creating it monstrous and trying to make it unique to whatever your vision is, to not have it so deep rooted in reality that you don't feel the monster aspect of it. And that's what I was trying to take into it. But I love what they did with John Voight's character, and there's a number of times where they would have like this kind of jump scare moment, or if not a jump scare moment, it's just like this ease in moment. and they would subtly in the bed of the audio put in this snake sound to kind of make the connection of this is the serpent of the people. Like he is snaking into your guys' family to like separate you.
Little snake in the grass he is. He's a little snake in the grass.
And that's me obviously going as deep as I can and really kind of breaking down what I'm receiving from it outside of whatever the intent is. I thought there's a lot of moments where the ADR was just terrible. The ADR was just terrible.
For any listeners not familiar, ADR is a process it just sort of refers to a lot of times when you're on set, if things are really noisy, you don't end up using any of the audio recording of the dialogue. And so later on, once the edit is complete, the actors will go into a booth and re-record their dialogue to match up with the edit. And yeah, definitely notably off a few times in Anaconda.
Man, there's a ton of, and can't compare it to, it just has to be its own thing, but there are a ton of movies from the 90s that just, the ADR is just terrible. Like it's tough for them to like match the tone of what that environment was supposed to sound like, or people just not fully matching their performance versus on-screen performance. So I ended up landing on a 5 for sound.
Hey, I think that is the only category in this that you and I may align on. That brings us to the final one of theme. I think you and I definitely had pretty different reactions to this movie. I really appreciate it as just a silly comedy action that you can laugh at. But it sounds like you are able to still sort of have a similar experience as an adult, appreciating it for something that is meant to be a little bit more tense, or I don't want to say horror because it's not really scary. But am I correct in saying that?
You're pretty much correct on that. I had a good time with it, but I wanted to really try to give it a bit more energy and try not to write it off as just this or just that. Even if studio is making a bunch of blatant decisions or whatever, it's just like, nah, I'm still about to try to reflect and receive it by what I'm taking from it. Outside of whoever made whatever decision, this is what I'm just going to base it off of just watching it and not the outside involvements of everybody who had a hand in it.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, then on that note, what were your thoughts on the themes? I'm going to be honest, I really wasn't able to identify a theme in this, or at least one that that felt intentional. It didn't just feel like a result.
I mean, the biggest thing is just I wrote down greed and deception, two antagonists marrying the role of the serpent. Plays heavily into biblical idea of the snake as a corrupter. Just in regards to Jon Voight's character, getting into Owen Wilson's head about the money aspect of it. And like, in life, sometimes it just takes to flip one person to kind of have the entire house fall. So not fully remembering how it unfolded from there, I was very interested to see once Owen Wilson flipped, if anybody else was going to flip on that side of just the money aspect of it. And I was impressed that like it didn't end up going that way. Like Owen Wilson got snaked and that was it.
That's a great way of putting it. By the way, I would have really appreciated if Jon Voight's character was just called Snakeman. I think I would have that would maybe just enjoyed this a little bit more, but Owen Wilson getting snaked, I'll take it. That's just as good. Dom, 1 out of 10, what do we give the theme?
I gave the theme a 6, only because like to me, if I took from it this whole like a snake coming into the family to just like dismantle everybody, I felt like that was pretty consistent throughout. There's a lot of stuff that's all over the place, but that would be the one thing that just felt consistent from the second we met him to the end of the film. Like that was just his goal through and through.
I would not have been able to get that out of this, so I'm glad that you were maybe able to squeeze it out. That's a little constrictor pun there. But anyway, we've got all the points locked in. So, Dom, I get to reveal to you now what you gave the movie. You gave the plot a 7, the characters and performances a 6. Same for visual storytelling. You gave the use of sound a 5, and another 6 to the theme. That gives you a total of 60. So here on Real Talk, that's like a C Ish, a C, a B. So what would you give the movie if you had to determine it a letter grade?
Oh, definitely a C. It was very average film. What it felt like for me, it was just an average movie. There was nothing that like took it over the top. There was nothing where I would be like, man, I gotta see that again. This is like, oh, it was a movie.
It happened. That giant snake happened. Well, I appreciate you watching the film here for old Al. I again wasn't quite as kind. My score was as follows. I gave the plot a 2 to your 7. For me, I just felt like everything just sort of happened because it kind of needed to. I felt like it was pretty silly, and you mentioned some plot holes and stuff that went a long way. And I mentioned it in my open. I appreciate this movie for a piece of entertainment because I can't say I wasn't entertained, but I also have to acknowledge the reaction that I had, I genuinely don't think was the intention of the creators. So anyway, I gave the plot a 2. Characters and performances, I gave it a 4 to your 6. More to do with the characters and the performances themselves. The visual storytelling, I gave it another 4 to the 6. I thought it was pretty, like I said earlier, kind of paint by numbers, doesn't really try to do anything. And I think that there's enough going on that it should try. So I gave it a 4. Use of sound, 5 to your 5. Nothing to explain there. And for theme, I gave it a 1 to your 6 just because, like I said, I wasn't able to identify any themes when I watch it. Not going to pretend like I tried that hard to dig into it. So I really genuinely do appreciate what you pulled from it because I think there's really something to that. But my honest reaction was I gave it a 1. So for me, that was a 32 out of 100. So I just gave it a D. I feel like that probably has more to do with my sensibilities, but I do again appreciate this movie. I can't imagine who exactly I would recommend it to. Probably won't be revisiting it. So that all feels like pretty solid D to me. Regardless, this is why I want to have you on, Dom, because I knew you were gonna see more in it, and I knew you were gonna appreciate more than this old lion did. Maybe I'm jaded because I just spend too much time in the jungle, and maybe I got feelings towards swamps and other beasts. You mentioned 8 Mile earlier. Maybe you should come back to the jungle and review that one with me. What do you think?
Oh, I would love it. You have no clue how that film molded my childhood.
Then we've got some breaking news. Here at the end of the Anaconda review, we're going to bring Dom back and we're going to talk about 8 Mile because I happen to know that's coming up later in the season in our music biopics episode. Dom, I appreciate you so much for coming. It's as soon as I knew I was going to do the show, I knew you were going to be one of the first friends of mine that I reached out to. So I really appreciate you making the time. I can't wait for you to come back. And on your way home, just keep an eye out for giant snakes, will you?
Yeah, I'm watching my feet.
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A+ gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch. All great art requires study and discussion, and so too do great films require multiple screenings to even begin scratching the surface of the themes that lie within.
I ain't afraid to die anymore. I've done it already.
Is a line of dialogue that perfectly defines the film's title. The Revenant is a devastating picture that flawlessly showcases the horrific challenges required to be a frontiersman surviving during the fur trapping era of America's western expansion. If circumstances weren't grisly enough, the film's central character endures a bear attack that is the second most devastating thing to happen to him in the film. Leonardo DiCaprio broke his Oscar-losing streak by picking up the Academy Award for his leading role, and director Alejandro G. Inarritu also won an Oscar for The Revenant, which took home Best Picture that night. But Bridge of Spies' Mark Rylance prevented Tom Hardy from being awarded for his unforgettable performance. There's a lot to unpack with this one, so hop in your birthday suit, pop in a headless horse carcass, and help me welcome back my jungle pal, Jimmy the Toucan. Jimmy, you live in the trees. Have you ever met a squirrel pretending to be God?
A squirrel pretending to be God? No, but I do know a certain lion that spends a lot more time in the movie theater than in the jungle.
Oh, wow. I don't know if that's supposed to be a shot at me or not. Have you ever been hanging out in the trees and like a horse just fell from the sky?
No.
and followed shortly thereafter by Oscar winner Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, and it's one of, if not for the grizzly bear attack, it really is one of the grisliest moments. He cuts it open.
Yeah, he tauntauns it.
He tauntauns it.
I don't know, just generally speaking, what are your thoughts on the plot of The Revenant? I'm sure several things come to mind, like a horse falling off of a mountain and landing with such an impact its head falls off. Just one of the many details
Yeah.
filmmaking team did not spare when bringing this novel to life.
I really like this movie, and I really enjoy that this movie very much is a modern American Western. When we talk about the Western and as the story form, we're not just talking about the movie genre with cowboys and saloons and desert landscapes and stuff. We're talking about a story form that sits right at the intersection of mythology and history itself. One of my favorite film critics and cinema historians, Donald Spoto, wrote a lot about the Western. He said the American Western is built on a foundation of myths. Myths of rugged individualism, of the lone gunslinger who brings justice, and of the frontier as a place of endless possibility. The frontier was not simply a land of freedom, it was a place of violence, displacement, and complexity. In talking about The Revenant, this film is an evolved version of that historic mythological story form. We have this retelling of a mythology about this very real historical personality.
Right.
And what I think is so fascinating to me is that we are invited into this violent and dangerous wilderness. This dangerous place is a perfect setting for this kind of mythological unfolding.
It's hell. I mean, it's a snowy hell.
The endurance challenge of this, I think that in terms of what this film does in this retelling of a mythological yet historical figure, it is, if you boil it down, and again, I like this movie a lot. If you boil it down, it's a pretty simple revenge story, which ultimately makes it predictable and, unfortunately, loses some steam with me. So I did give the plot to this movie an 8.
When you were describing sort of the myth of, the story and the myth of the West and the myth of the Westerns and how that sort of continues to permeate in our culture and evolve. And I think in many ways, that fascination that America has had with the Western for so long is sort of the backbone of hip hop culture. I think there's a lot of connections there, but I'll keep it connected to The Revenant. But what I think that the plot does really well, only for little bits, little times, it sort of introduces this supernatural element and this idea that really elevates what otherwise is a very straightforward telling of what could, be mistaken by some as just all true actual events. And I think that the injection of him being reunited with Hawk, his son, him being Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Hugh Glass, and then, of course, the last shot of the movie when he sees his wife. And I interpret that, I'm curious if you interpret it the same way, that he then passes away. And so I think that sort of device, the plot device there, the way it's just sprinkled in a little bit, just like at the beginning, the way they're hunting the elk, and that becomes sort of an analogy he uses later on in the movie. We see the scene where I genuinely believe his character dies and comes back to life, which is what the Revenant refers to. Revenant means. And so I feel like that is confirmed when the last shot of the movie is him then seeing his wife and right before he passes away. And so would you say it's predictable? I think that's unfair, because if you're going to boil something down to being a revenge movie, then it's ultimately going to be predictable unless they subvert expectations and the person doesn't get revenge. So I think this plot I dare I say, Jimmy, if you and I watched this together for the first time and I hit pause at any point, I don't think Jimmy could have been predicting what was coming next, other than the fact Tom Hardy's character might die. Well, you told me what you give the plot. You told me you give it an 8 there, so that naturally kind of segues us into characters and performances. This movie is famous for nothing else if not that it broke Leo's Oscar losing streak. Full disclosure, listeners, I'm not a lion that's really into the Oscars. That sort of thing doesn't mean much to me, but I do remember at the time several friends of mine really being excited about it. If I'm not mistaken, they were even betting before that episode of the Academy Award to see if he was going to win. So people were really involved in it, but I said at the time, I'll say it now, and I'll set you up this way. I think we got to talk about Tom Hardy's performance in this movie, because I don't want to say it steals the show. I mean, this movie is brimming with wonderful performances, but I think he gives this really, really interesting, what ultimately kind of isn't a layered character, I'm comfortable saying he's just very straightforward in what he's doing and how he does it, but just menacing and terrifying. I digress, Jimmy. Tell me what you thought of the characters and performances.
I think that his character is a brute, and he's a brute that has been brutalized by this untamed wilderness. After reviewing it, I started to put myself in his shoes a little bit, and I thought about how he has one objective, really, that is to make his money. He's just there to do his job, and part of that job is his survival, and any obstacle to that survival must be overcome. I really think that if you tell this story, if we told this story from his perspective, what he does is very human and very natural in a world where everything is a threat. I thought that his brutality was emblematic of the sort of larger theme that connects the American Western, the wilderness, the mythology. He is a kind of larger than life bad guy, which I really enjoy.
I mean, and he has to be, because if the grizzly bear that attacks Leo is the primer for the end fight, you have to reverse engineer a character that can be more menacing than a grizzly bear. And as difficult as it was to watch, and I'm a lion for goodness sake, as difficult as it was to watch, Leo just get shredded up there. That fight at the end between the two of them, you talk about Westerns. Tell me a better showdown. I mean, you easily could think of like a Sergio Leone, the sort of Mexican standoff. But when you just talk about a bare knuckle fist fight, I mean, this is as gritty, grueling a fight. And I don't want to stand on hyperbole, but this might be the best showdown fight I've ever seen. One of the last times you were on the show, we talked about No Country for Old Men. You were a little bummed out that we didn't get a big showdown with Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem. Boy, you get a showdown in this movie, Jimmy, and then some.
You mentioned the bear attack. These two things are very deeply interconnected in this myth, and it is they are both such brutal showdowns. One in which one of the characters is surprised at the resilience and the violence of the other. Tom Hardy says, "You came all this way for your revenge, but nothing will bring your boy back."
That felt like such a, he knew he was gonna get killed and he was thinking of something to say. And boy, there's no better last line, because and you can almost see the regret in Glass's eyes.
Yeah. There's a great musical cue when he finds out that Leo is still alive, and the look on his face, that is the mark of death. He knows it, and that's why he skips town.
The only thing that Tom Hardy's John Fitzgerald is afraid of is Hugh Glass's survival.
It is the most major threat to him. After all of the arrows and all of the brutality in the winter and all of this stuff, that's his largest threat. In contrast, when we look at I call it like a survival, like endurance challenge. Dude gets destroyed by a bear, okay? And and then he crawls his way into this, like, across the world to get to do the one thing that he's got to do. That one thing that drives him. And it is poisonous to his heart. But I want to call attention to, like, that kind of endurance challenge. Not only did this character perform, but like Leo performed it. He did stuff on camera that was so gut-wrenching. There's a part, and it's my favorite moment, where to me, this is why he won the award. There's a part where he's hurt and he's down by this, like, frozen like river that's going by. Okay, everything is just bleak and cold and colorless and lifeless, and yet the bad guys are, like, creeping up on him. There's a part where, in order to evade, he backs slowly into a frozen, rushing river of water, and he doesn't flinch. He is laser focused on the direction that the bad guys are coming in, and that, to me, he doesn't react to it. He doesn't startle at how cold it is.
Yeah, Wim Hof would be proud of Leo. I know the moment you're thinking of, and I thought the same thing when I was watching it. I mean, this is a guy who was so dedicated to his performance, he let a grizzly bear attack him. Now, I didn't bother watching the credits, so I assume it was a real bear. We were reviewing The Edge later in this episode, and that was a real bear. So I just assume, which is, again, a dedication that should earn you an Oscar. You know, I don't know if anybody got attacked by a bear in Bridge of Spies, but
there's a part where Leo grabs a fish out of the water and just starts eating it. Okay, that's not like an actor doing a performance. That's a dude grabbing a fish out of the water and eating it. Okay, so I give, and I think it's obvious, I give the characters and performances of The Revenant an absolute 10.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy. I had a game I wanted to play before I got your score, though. But it's fine. It would lock in your score. We'll still do.
We can do it. Do the game.
We will do the game. I'm just saying, Jimmy, I'll ask you for your scores. All right, God damn it. This is Al's show. I know you're a toucan, and that beak likes to
continue.
Anyway, we've got a little game we're going to play here. It's called Better Than Glass. As I mentioned earlier, it was the performance of Hugh Glass by Leonardo DiCaprio that won him his first, and I believe to this day, only Oscar. Let us know in the comments if that stands corrected. So what I'm going to do is I have 3 pictures here, Jimmy, that I'm going to ask you, and you have to tell me if Leonardo DiCaprio's performance was better in this movie or in The Revenant. This movie being the movie that I will list.
Okay.
So Better Than Glass, here we go. Are you ready, Jimmy? Are you prepared? Okay. Was Leo's performance as Glenn, who appeared in 2 episodes of The New Lassie, which aired from 1989 to 1992, better than his performance of Hugh Glass?
No, it was not.
I personally, I didn't see those 2 episodes. I'm a big fan of The New Lassie. Moving on. In 1994's The Foot Shooting Party, was DiCaprio's performance of Bud better than his performance of Hugh Glass?
The Foot Shooting Party?
That's right. Believe it or not, that came out after What's Eating Gilbert Grape. That's a true fact. Look it up, folks. Let us know in the comments if you're a fan of the Foot Shooting Party. Jimmy, was that better? Was that a better performance than the Oscar-winning performance of Hugh Glass?
Just based on the title, I'm going to say no.
Okay, there you go. Jimmy says no. The last one, Jimmy, before we retire this bit forever. The Audition was a short film released in 2016 and was directed by Martin Scorsese. But was Leonardo DiCaprio's performance of himself better than his portrayal of Hugh Glass? This means in this movie, directed by Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio plays himself. Is he better at playing himself or Hugh Glass? Jimmy, you have to give me an answer.
I think he's better at playing Hugh Glass, okay?
Well, hey, the Toucans don't lie. You gave it the 10. Moving on to visual storytelling.
I think that there are these really wonderful long takes of just brutal action, and it's violent, endless arrows and bullets, and just like the camera never cuts. It's like and it places us so firmly inside of these moments. There are very beautiful shots punctuate the harsh realities and the dark wilderness, and I just think that there is a level of expertise that is demonstrated and examined here. It's a beautiful film.
There's a motif that I'm curious if you picked up on, Jimmy. There are these very natural, almost DVD menu sort of shots of just wilderness happening, no people, no life in it, and they're really beautiful. And there's always this contrast that's presented. So I'll give you an example. There's a shot that I know you will immediately come to mind where the camera pans up from a campfire, and it's just sort of looking at the silhouette of the trees and the dark night sky, and the embers from the fire are going up, and it is that contrast of the warm glowing embers against the cold sky. Then the sort of photo negative version of that is towards the end of the film when Tom Hardy's body has been drugged into the river and sort of gifted to the Native Americans from Hugh Glass. And there's this moment where the camera just sort of settles, and right in the center of frame, there's this trail of blood that runs to the river. And again, everything is white and blue and cold with the exception of this red streak in the center of the frame. And so while you're bringing up these really beautiful shots, I just have to call attention to that because there's several, more than just those two, but there's moments where we just find these frames. We're right in the center. There is this beautiful contrast, but it is totally natural to us because we've seen how it was birthed and evolved and came to be. And so it doesn't seem like contrast. And I just thought that was such a kind of gorgeous symbol for, sort of the morality of the characters.
The burning ember shot, that absolutely is one of the most magical moments. And there are like little key moments that again just brings so much authenticity to this world. If you combine that with the authenticity of the costumes, realistic and visceral the blood looks.
It's a backdrop that forces survival. If you're not surviving, you're dying. There's only two options. And if the weather doesn't get you, a grizzly bear will get you, or some Native Americans will get you, or if not all of that, if you survive it, you got to deal with your bunkmate who just killed your son. Obviously, I am both a lion and a mascot for a production company. One of the things Real Digital has always been very lucky to have are great first assistant cameras. For listeners out there who might not be familiar with what an assistant camera does, amongst many, many things and many responsibilities, they are often the focus puller for the camera operator, which means the operator, whoever has the camera in their hand, is usually not keeping the shot in focus. That's being done by a different individual, usually through a monitoring system and something called a focus wheel. There's a really great article that is out with the gentleman who is the focus puller for The Revenant. The gentleman's name is John T. Connor. I was watching the movie and realized that so much of the handheld shots are also close-ups. In this movie, all of the tracking shots that are these handheld shots are very, very close up. And so the focus is so unbelievably important because you've talked about Leo grabbing a fish and taking a bite out of it. If that shot is not in focus, if the focus is soft or it's on the wrong part, do you ask Leo to grab another fish and take another bite? I mean, I just have to bring appreciation to this part of the game, because anytime you see something in a film and you appreciate, wow, they got that in one take, you better thank the focus puller and the first assistant camera, because they're just as vital to you seeing that happening as the performer who achieved it, the writer who wrote it, the director who had the gumption to ask the actor to potentially grab a fish and bite it. I don't know. I just had to call attention to John O'Connor. The website that I read it on is Frontier Partisans. This is very small, everyone, forgive me. Filming The Revenant was an epic challenge is the name of the article. It was from 2015. I encourage everybody to check it out. Again, I don't want to get too inside baseball here on Real Talk, but it was something I thought. I looked it up, and wouldn't you know, there was an actual article about it with the gentleman. So I'll digress. Jimmy, what did you give the visual storytelling 1 out of 10?
Al, so easy. I gave it a 10.
Locking in a 10. Jimmy, let's move on to use of sound.
This film did win for Best Cinematography.
It did. It won Best Picture, Best Cinematography, Best Director, correct?
Director, Best Actor.
Yeah, but not Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy was not the... There were only 4 Ninja Turtles that night, Mr. Hardy. Use of sound in this movie. Jimmy, what did you think? I have a little bit of a criticism, but I'm actually going to save it to the very end when I reveal my score. That's a tease for everybody. What did you think of the use of sound?
Well, I think that music plays a really good element in telling the story and stuff. And I feel like the natural sound that was saturated in this whole thing was a really important part of it. And getting good sound, getting good natural sound is really difficult. Shout out to the sound department. Shout out to the score. I gave it a 9.
Give it a 9. Okay. Locking in a 9. Well, that moves us on to theme, and I don't mind moving on quickly because, again, the theme of this episode of the show is man versus nature, and much as is the case in The Edge, the movie goes from being about a bear attack to kind of a mano-a-mano, 2 guys in the woods. So too does The Revenant, but I genuinely believe in many ways, and Jimmy, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, that Hugh Glass in this movie, in this film, okay, not in the book, not as a real person, but in this movie, I think he represents nature. And the man versus nature quality to this film is Leonardo DiCaprio representing nature and man's alignment with nature versus Tom Hardy's sort of representation of man. And I think that this is a movie where nature wins. Ultimately, even Leo succumbs to the wilderness in the end and to the harsh reality of the environment.
I didn't think about it like that.
Well, that's because I have to defend the theme of this episode. So that's my that's why I'm coming with that one, Jimmy.
Well, it's it's an interesting conflict because when you see it like that, it does give, I think, more depth to and credence to the theme, mostly about how the mythology, the story form, the difference. I read a lot about the difference between the historical reality of Hugh Glass and, the blockbuster movie making and the fictional elements of The Revenant. I think that much of this, although it is visually, these elements are very cut and dry, right? And I like your argument about it presenting as a metaphor in like a spiritual way. And I think that's sort of where you're going with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to summarize what I'm saying, because I think when we talk about something being adapted to the screen, I think the way I would be very comfortable summarizing a novel that seems to be, again, creating a myth around a quote-unquote real event, I feel like the cinematic adaptation of that is turning it into a metaphor. I don't think it is meant to be a visual representation of what actually happened. I think it is the most metaphorical version of the telling of the story so far.
it reinforces the depth of the myth. I think that's great. I really think that's great.
Almost a biblical telling of this journey that one individual was willing to again endure because he had a mission.
He got he got destroyed by a bear and crawls his way to murder the guy that killed his son. And that is, it's heavy. It's super heroic. And that's sort of, again, the reinforcement of the myth. So when you put it in a spiritual, metaphorical way, it does change my response. It does change my read of it. I'm looking at it as an evolved version of the American Western story form. And it does present a deeper, darker look into the resilience of the human spirit and of the human body. I couldn't do any of those things. I can't do any of those things.
Well, you are a toucan.
I'm a toucan.
Be fair, if a toucan got attacked by a grizzly bear, I don't think people would expect the same thing. But hopefully we never have to see that. Unless, of course, you give this movie a really bad grade. Then you might have to deal with that bear that got Leo. But I'm curious, what do you give the theme out of 10, Jimmy?
I gave it an 8.
You gave it an 8.
Yep.
Well, you know what that means. That means we've got all of your scores locked in, and we have a total. So, you gave the plot an 8, the characters and performances a 10, the visual storytelling a 10, the use of sound a 9, and the themes an 8, which brings us to a total of 90. You cool giving this film an A?
Yeah, I'll give it an A.
I'm locking in an A. All right, well, I'm going to reveal my score now, Jimmy. I gave the plot to your 10. I'm so sorry. I gave the plot to your 8 a 10.
Mm-hmm.
I gave the characters and performances to your 10 a 10. I gave the visual storytelling, for the first and perhaps only time in this show's history, a 9.75. And the reason I didn't give it a 10 is because I have one very teeny tiny critique, and it's that I wish they would have subtitled the Native American language. I really would have enjoyed actually knowing what some of those characters were saying. It is such a small critique. It's a 9.75 out of 10. So moving on, use of sound. Similarly, I gave it a 9.5 instead of a 10 because there were certain moments where I felt like the sound design and the Foley got carried away. I thought they were trying to make something so immersive and visceral, it became cartoonish. In particular, some of the just squishy arrow hits and things, it was just, it legitimately pulled me out. So I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. And then the use of themes, I also gave it a 9.5. So for me, The Revenant got a 97.5. That's an A+ in my book. Jimmy, you want to go camping? Maybe you want to go on a hike after this one? Luckily, you and I live in the tropics. We live in the jungle. I got a couple questions for you before I let you go, Jimmy. One, will you leave a like on this video?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, be like Jimmy. Leave a like on this video. Jimmy, will you go to our merch page and check out our merch shop? That's on Redbubble under Platinum Plastic. We've got a real talk merch page, and I know you've seen it because you've got your own t-shirt.
I do.
You've got a Jimmy the Toucan design. It's based on Jimmy's favorite movie snack, and it's available on over 36 different items you can get that design on. So Jimmy, that wasn't a question. So my last question I'll leave you with is, will you come back? Will you watch another movie with your old pal Al?
Al, you know I'd love to. And those of you listening, leave a comment and tell us what you think my favorite snack is after you visit Redbubble and see all of my amazing logos.
That's right, Jimmy. Jimmy the plug. I love it. All right, buddy. Well, I'm so glad you came. I can't wait for you to come again. And until next time, keep soaring, buddy. Yeehaw!
Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you please give us a follow if you're enjoying the show, as well as comment what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll. 1997's The Edge is a star-studded affair, and I'm talking about more than just the cast. Director Lee Tamahori had the pleasure of working with a screenplay penned by David Mamet and was supported by the legendary producer Art Linson, whose experiences working on the film inspired a novel that was also adapted into a movie. Anthony Hopkins brings to life billionaire Charles Morris, who has decided to tag along on a photo shoot that his wife, played by Elle Macpherson, is the center of. She surprises Hopkins' Richard for his birthday, but the gift she gives is less a party and more of an unfortunate continuation of heavy-handed foreshadowing. The inciting incident that curbs the characters is a classic lesson why you don't play chicken with a flock of geese. But in The Edge, birds are the least of your worries. Alec Baldwin joins the cast playing a photographer named Bob, who is a caricature's caricature with only a touch more development than his co-star played by Bart the Bear. Bob and Richard are in fact being stalked by a man-eating bear who surprisingly isn't the film's major antagonist. The third act of the film plays like a morality play that forgot what stance it wants to take, and in doing so loses a lot of the momentum built early in the picture. The Edge balances a few classic story archetypes simultaneously, but to what end? Although consistently entertaining, the film's resolution doesn't seem to harmonize with the brooding plot that teases a more profound message than the one delivered. I'm stranded in the wilderness now with funny man and friend, stand-up comedian Matt Somerstein. Matt, it's so great to have you here, my friend.
Al, you have a lovely home.
Thank you so much. It is provided, in fact, by our company, our parent company, Real Digital Media and Consulting.
Shout out Real
Services.
Digital.
It's just you really can't get a better company. I mean,
You can try, but you won't.
It may sound like I'm a mascot talking about the company I represent right now, but I just want to make it clear. We're talking about The Edge today, 1997's The Edge. When was the first time you saw this movie?
I've seen bits and pieces over the years, but this is actually the first time I've seen the whole movie.
This is the way we do things here. I know it's your first time on the show, and we have a little bit of a rubric. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about the plot. Then we're going to talk about the characters and performances. After that, we're going to break down the visual storytelling. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the use of sound. And finally, we're going to talk about theme. Each one of those categories, you're going to score 1 out of 10, and we're going to get a final score at the end, at which point I'm going to review what I scored The Edge. What did you think of the plot?
You know, I've always been drawn to this movie. I've never seen the whole thing, but I've always, like, you know, in snippets on, like, HBO or, like, the plot being that we're in the Alaskan wilderness. This billionaire and his wife, his hot trophy wife.
That's right.
Played by Elle Macpherson, is a model, and she's being photographed by great photographer Alec Baldwin.
That's right.
And his scrappy African-American assistant, Harold Perrineau. I like the movie a lot. I think once the issue of the bear is dealt with, I was surprised to check and see that there are like 35 minutes left in the movie. I thought there was a lot of good showing and not telling, or crumbs along the way.
Well, and I feel like, you know, to me, the mark of a really good plot, you know, you talk about how predictable things are, and how they may or may not be. I think this movie is really successful at, it is difficult to predict. This is apparently Anthony Hopkins' character's birthday as well, which is one of the reasons I'm going to assume that he's going on the photo shoot as well. Again, I am the mascot of a production company.
Yeah.
We produce a lot of photo shoots. We usually don't have billionaires that are popping over. But then again, we're not doing as many photo shoots in Alaska as maybe we need to do.
True.
That is the setup.
Maybe he's the meal ticket. There's a
Funding
theme
it.
of, like, you know, people only love me for my money. You have that scene in the beginning where the guy is like, I have this great endeavor,
Yes.
the mountain man.
Yeah.
He's like, for only $30 or $40 million. And then Anthony Hopkins is like, oh, I just thought you were being courteous. I'm more than just my wallet.
He's a really weird character. Like, I got 2/3 of the way through this movie, and I was thinking, he almost feels like God. He's this billionaire who's also exceedingly intelligent.
Tactful and intelligent.
I don't know if kind is the right word,
Yeah.
but he's very thoughtful.
He's very
Like,
thoughtful, as
there-
Harold Perrineau says.
Yeah, there's just nothing.
He's really
wrong with
a
him.
very benevolent
Yeah,
and all-knowing and all-capable, basically.
but still somehow finds himself in the exact same situation as the rest of the characters. What's even funnier is Alec Baldwin's character sees a photograph of the mountain man's friend.
It's so real.
That's right.
That's what I need.
That guy, he would be a great model. He doesn't have any representation. He's not going to have an agent. He's not going to ask for, perpetuity or anything like that. So they go out to find this model, and things don't go so well.
Things do not go so well.
They end up crashing the plane.
A bird fall.
And I will say, as a lion, there is the holy trinity. There's the lion, the tiger, and the bear. So it was nice to see.
See your brethren out there.
Yeah.
Bart the bear?
Bart the bear. Although I thought it was a little offensive. The character is just called the bear in the movie, which I felt like, come on.
Right. Name him. We're in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just Steven.
Steven without a surname.
And then there's the bear, where you're just identified by your species. Right. So that's the breakdown. Elle Macpherson's character did have a last name, for what it's worth.
Mickey?
I think it was Mickey.
Mickey Morse?
Morse.
He's Charles Morse.
Yeah, so she didn't really get a last name. I guess she
got his last name.
He got his last name. Huh.
Yeah, some geese fly into the propeller.
Which is why
and they're being like chopped up and they're all bloody and they're coming through the windshield. It was among the more like hardcore scenes. In the movie. And the plane goes down in the water.
The pilot does not survive. It is not confirmed whether he was killed by goose or drowning.
But he didn't make it.
He didn't make it.
Anthony Hopkins checks.
He sure does. No,
Alec Baldwin dips. But that's okay. If I was in a plane that crashed, I'd probably...
Yeah, that's one of those things. I don't know that I hold it against him for trying to survive. No. But Anthony Hopkins is like, he finishes his Rubik's Cube. He pulls out a knife and saves
thank God she gave him that
assistant.
Knife. Yeah, that knife came in pretty handy on this trip.
Yeah, it both saves the assistant's life in the beginning and is the confirmation of adultery later in the film.
True, it holds a lot of power.
Yeah.
He had the warranty.
Nothing gets passed up.
When he started a fire with the warranty later in the movie, and I thought he was just burning up the evidence and that they were going to be like friends now.
Yeah, but what a great visual metaphor of the
There's no warranty.
They're in a survival situation. Very quickly, they realize that they are being hunted by a man-eating bear, and that quickly becomes the driving point of the plot. You understand? Yes, they need to be found. They need to survive. But the immediate concern is this giant Kodiak bear that is barreling down on them.
It really is. It is a relentless bear, and I was almost like, wow, they are going through a lot right now. They're like, they're about to fall off a bridge, or it starts to pour and they're freezing and they haven't eaten in a long time. And then the bear is there. And Mr. Bear hurts our friend Harold Perrineau, Steven, who is a city slicker.
He was identified as a city slicker.
There's a handful of things a little bit like, okay, we could have used a little bit more backstory on these characters. And, props to like tell the story just through items or devices or whatever. But like, we needed a little bit more information about who these people are.
Oh, I think so. I mean, look, I think in any movie when you kill someone, you have to ask yourself, why did we do it? And when Steven dies, he was just there to remind us that the bear is a man.
Right, the bear is still out there.
As soon as you see Steven in these circumstances, oh, well, this is unfortunate. He's probably not going to last too long.
He cuts himself with the knife, unfortunately, unprovoked, while trying to make a spear.
Pretty
he wasn't
deep
long
cut in a play. Yeah,
deep cut.
the city slicker.
Yeah, he's a city slicker.
Would have made Billy Crystal proud. And then it's just down to Alec Baldwin's Bob, as he's referred to by Bob.
Wait, we skipped over this part where when they're on the plane.
Oh, of course.
Anthony Hopkins' character is suspicious of many things.
Yes,
he's suspicious that maybe his beautiful young wife has been sleeping with this rugged photographer, Alec Baldwin, and he says to him, he's like, "How are you planning to kill me?" And then the birds strike and the plane goes down.
It is,
it's Hitchcockian in a way, not so much the nature stuff, but like billionaire and young suspected person sleeping with my wife are on a secluded place, and man versus man.
Alec Baldwin is very dislikable.
Yeah, but he's redeemable. He has redeemable moments.
He does have redeemable moments.
And it did keep me like another plot point, like, what is going to happen there with their relationship once the danger?
We know that he's interested in Hopkins' wife. We know that Hopkins knows that. We know that he's a photographer. And you could argue that we don't really need to know more, but I do think if there was more context or something to these characters, that we would just care more. And that's what I ultimately think that when you're in a survival situation, when it is man versus nature, even man versus man, you do have to kind of care about one of the men. And I do think that
he's a prick.
You do get to a point in this movie where obviously you want to see a resolution, but I don't know how much I was rooting for either character. And I think that because the Anthony Hopkins character is he's a billionaire with this beautiful wife, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, never feel bad for a man with a plane. But then he, you kind of put all those things aside, and it's like, how do they, once their whatever's, or their real world whatever is stripped away, he's fucking Grizzly Adams out there.
I think we've definitely, covered the plot a lot. So if you were going to designate the plot a score, what would you give the edge?
Probably like a 7, because I did like it, but the more I think about it, it's not a great movie. It's not timed out very well at all. The third act is very like, who gives a shit?
It does happen in chunks, which are very weird. The first act, the birthday party.
She goes to bed and then she asks him to get her a sandwich.
The first thing I thought is, who lays down to bed and goes,
right,
you know what, I want a sandwich. You know what would help me fall asleep right now?
A fat ham sandwich. A turkey sandwich might do it.
Yeah, get
they had that nice honey-baked ham. And the cheese and the tomato, and someone left it out.
Not an eye mask, not a sleeping pill. She wants a sandwich. Her billionaire husband doesn't question this and is happy to go down and make a sandwich. As good as he is,
right? He didn't see anything.
It is the worst sandwich I've ever seen anyone make. It's like shit bread, like disproportionate amounts of ham that are cut.
I thought they sent them down there like it was an obvious go down there, and I put you in what is basically like a bear trap.
It's a perfect thesis statement about what this movie is, which is there's a sense of tone and dread that makes you feel things that the plot then does not deliver. When he is in the kitchen and he is staring at the open door and it is cutting back and forth between the ham, it does a great job of making you think this guy's about to get it or what's going to happen. And it's too early in the movie to not be able to forecast that it's obviously going to be a swerve. But what it turns out to be is absurd. Baldwin pretending to be a bear to this was all a big setup for
Happy
a surprise birthday party. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
It just doesn't make any sense.
You are alone downstairs. There is not a light on.
Yeah.
You think a bear is going to sneak up on you, but you didn't notice in the next room a group of people coming downstairs. It has a hokiness to it that I do actually think there's a charm to it that I got out of it. But I think that especially at the time, it's worth noting that it wasn't a big hit.
Yeah, it didn't do well.
It didn't do super well at the box office. Yeah, so and especially when you look at the heavy hitters, both behind the camera and in front, Anthony Hopkins is very much sort of the star of the movie, the kind of center that everything's around. It's a very Anthony Hopkins role. It's
cunning and mastermind and
stoic, and pensive and
all-knowing.
But
I liked it. I mean, I liked him a lot.
I kept thinking, what is this guy doing in this movie? What is this character doing with these other? Because even the idea that he would have a trophy wife doesn't really seem like He's
very worldly and wise and smart. And
I think he needed to be a little more common. I think he needed to cut loose a little bit more. The performance didn't seem appropriate for the character that we were being told we were watching. Anthony Hopkins is obviously you watch him paint a wall if you wanted to, but there was something whereas Alec Baldwin's character did feel a lot more authentic to me.
Yeah.
But it still at times was a little too much, and even it didn't make sense to me the way the other characters treated Alec Baldwin. It seemed like it would be different if everybody kind of knew, hey, this guy was kind of an asshole. But it seems like everybody kind of really loves him and likes him, but then also kind of loves and likes the Anthony Hopkins character equally.
Yeah.
But they're so unbelievably different. And when it's just them and it's in the woods, it is interesting and it works. The bear, I think, again, we have to mention the bear is a character. It's an important character in the movie. I was really surprised when the bear died, that they killed it when they did and how much of the movie was left.
Yeah.
Like, you're almost in a buddy movie where it's like, we got to kill a bear and survive. And they do that.
And let's go back to our
like switch.
Yeah, it's very uneven.
That switch that the character makes, and I think Baldwin plays it as well as he can, but the decision is again very, very silly. And I think takes what was an earnest, exciting action movie and turns it into a morality play that doesn't seem to really know the point it's trying to make.
Yeah, no. The characters?
Now that I just endorsed it so well, what would you give the characters and performances? And it is a balance of the characters and the performances.
Like 6.5. I like it, but it's not like it's good.
Yeah, so I think that the visual storytelling is maybe the strongest part of the movie.
Yeah, especially at the time. It's pretty proficient. There's a couple of nice... this isn't a visual medium, but whatever. The stuff in the plane.
I love
stuff with the bear.
I love when Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins are just, they haven't slept and they're just sitting in the center of this ring of fire. I love that visual.
Yeah.
I love the way they're just kind of like crazy and looking around and like
they're unhinged. They've been in the woods for a while. Their jackets are still warm somehow. They drive very quickly.
Oh,
no change of clothes.
What an
food.
endorsement for whatever labels they were wearing.
Yeah, I mean,
well, and on the visual storytelling note, let me ask, because once we get into the third act, there's a showdown between Hopkins and Baldwin.
right.
The way that plays out becomes a demonstration of the omnipotent sort of, nature of the Anthony Hopkins character. But strictly through the way it plays out visually, through the edit and the way it was shot. I mean, did it work? Were you like, oh shit, did it get you? I mean, there's obviously a bit of a swerve that happens where you think one character's about to get it and then the other character gets it.
I was waiting for him to fall into that pit.
Okay,
And
so
basically the whole movie, I thought they were going to either back the bear into there.
Yeah.
I thought the guy that they were looking for might show up. And
that's interesting. Yeah.
I
I mean, if there were ever examples of like too much foreshadowing, I wonder if this movie does that. I mean, we the whole sequence we talked about earlier with the ham in the kitchen, it's to get you afraid of a bear.
Yeah.
That we watch that bear eat one of our cast members alive. So you wonder like
how crazy.
And even before the dinner, there's the shopkeep who's the old mountain man who's
telling you these
talking
things
about the bear.
And my friend is out hunting and he doesn't have a phone and he's in the wild and
right.
he knows everything about being out there. So maybe they cut it. Maybe they were like, we don't need him.
Did we need that foreshadowing? Like, would
Probably
that
not.
moment been more effective for you if you didn't see multiple times in the movie
they did it
the
a couple
bear
times.
hole and because even in that scene when they arrived at that camp, he sees it and he looks at it. I don't know that I needed someone to tell me if someone falls in a hole, why that hole was there.
He when the friend was hurt because he cut himself with his knife, I thought he stepped in a trap or something.
Sure.
I think a lot of this movie could have used a little bit more logic, but I think movies in the 90s were like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's not what we're here for. And it's shocking to me that Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins and a bear in the mountains, that it didn't make a lot of money.
But in 1997, I think there's still people that just see him as Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't be the furthest thing from it. I mean, this is a guy who has the opportunity to kill people and, won't do it. There's not a sinister character in this movie.
No, everyone's pretty good. I mean, except for Alec Baldwin.
Sure.
Who's planning to kill him, but
even him, he
had a lot of redeeming moments.
and
they were up against it.
Saves Anthony Hopkins' life at one point.
They died saving my life. Sorry to do more impressions.
Bob. No, that's the extent of mine.
You gotta kill me, Bob. Like if he knows we're going out into the wilderness, it's all a plot. Why am I agreeing to go on the photo shoot that my wife isn't going on?
Mm-hmm.
And if he knew what was going on, maybe he did have something like in his bag
that
he loses when the plane crashes.
I do think when he says that to Bob, I think it's him in real time realizing it. I don't know that before he got on that plane he was as suspicious. I think that he had his suspicions. I think the conversation they have leads him to it, and I think maybe he feels even like safe enough to call him out on it, and then they immediately sort of get into the situation. And even that, I think the juxtaposition of those two things is so purposeful. It's a sign of we thought we were somewhere, we thought we were at a level of comfort, and now we are in a completely different situation that, at least for the interim, forces Bob to help keep Anthony Hopkins alive. And I have to wonder how much of him trying to keep Anthony Hopkins alive has to do with Steven being alive.
Oh,
and
right.
Once Steven is dead,
both of you or something, he says.
Once Steven's gone, it does allow for the Alec Baldwin character to evolve a bit more. But I don't know that the script gave that character enough opportunities because, again, they're running from a bear. They're trying to survive these other things. And it feels more like a buddy movie. But on that note, visual storytelling. What do you want to give it?
I give it like an 8.
We're now talking about the use of sound. And again, this isn't a movie that you're not going to walk away remembering the score.
A Jerry Goldsmith score. I'm so much more taken by what's happening visually. And like a lot of like we were saying before, like he's like, what are we going to eat? And he's like, don't worry. And then suddenly they have like this perfect squirrel trap made. And then they are doing something and they kill the bear and then suddenly they're eating the bear and they've carved up the bear and they've turned it into bear coats.
Oh,
these guys have the energy of people that haven't been lost in the woods for 6 days. You know, as they're flying, I was like, okay. And great bear sounds. A man killer.
I will say, I think the only knock that I had regarding that was a little inconsistent in terms of, you know, when we first meet the bear, the 3 guys are just like hiking through the woods, having a chat, and they stop talking because they kind of hear like a
yeah.
Whereas then later on, the character is hanging out at night in the quiet by himself, and the bear walks right up on him. It's such a small nitpick. I think it's just worth pointing out if we're talking about the sound design, because it is inconsistent in that regard.
I give it an 8 on sound design.
Give it an 8. I love it. That's 2 8s in a row.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's what the movie really does well. The visuals and the sound.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the creme de la creme working on it. So there's really no reason that it wouldn't be technically
Did that
superior.
producer make a lot of other like action movies?
This is a segment we call What Movies Did Art Linson Make?
What movies did Art Linson?
Art Linson.
Now a note from our friends from FanDuel and Blue Chew.
That's right. We're also trying to land one with DraftKings. Yeah, it's hard to bet on movies.
You can bet on our scores.
The opening weekend. Most recently, he is the executive producer for a little TV show called Yellowstone.
Oh, that's mountainous.
Yes, very mountainous.
That's rural.
He had a good stretch kind of in the mid-aughts. Into the Wild, The Black Dahlia, Lords of Dogtown.
Love that movie.
Yes.
And Into the Wild is also, you know, Alaskan Wilderness.
A little movie called Fight Club.
Ugh.
The movie he produced before The Edge, a little flick Jim Gaffigan loves called Heat.
Oh, Heat. Love Heat.
Oh yeah,
everyone loves Heat.
It doesn't get any better. One of the best.
That's
Art Linson.
Was he the executive producer?
I believe so.
Okay.
I have.
I guess I don't even know what the difference would be, but
just who's actually working and who's getting credit for it.
Right.
What?
Right.
Spoken like the mascot
signing the checks
of a production company. All I know is
we're so grateful for our executive and
oh my god,
producers
yeah,
Real Digital.
Please, Robert Pearson, the executive producer of this
what a
show.
guy.
Anyway, also worth mentioning that in The Edge, Bob, not the best representation of a Bob. Our Bob, the leader
that's
of the crew.
Not, that's not where my mind goes when I think Bob.
Yeah.
I think Bob Pearson.
That's right, baby. Regardless, enough about that guy. The last thing we need to discuss is the theme of The Edge. I think there's a couple different themes going on.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and I talked earlier about the couple archetypes that this balances. I mean, I wouldn't even really be comfortable calling it a man versus nature movie, because this is very much more, I think, man versus man. And even when the men are going up against nature, it is more or less an opportunity.
And surviving in the wild.
Right, but that is all just an opportunity, I think, for us to further see the difference between them, so that when they battle each other, it's more meaningful.
Well, I like some of it, but this is kind of what I was talking about before, where it would have been good to like have more backstory. There's a handful of things that are said, like the thing about like, you billionaires, you don't understand, and there's like this class war struggle thing between Alec Baldwin and Charles.
The exceedingly successful Alec Baldwin.
Right. I guess at this time we're supposed to look at a photographer as like a starving artist, but he's also like extremely wealthy. He has that watch that tells the time in New York and LA. That's what I mean. Like, it doesn't add up. Like, he's obviously very wealthy. This is different than doing coke off the girl's legs in the middle of the photo shoot. I have this watch that can tell the time in LA and New York and all these things. This is like extreme wealth, but he's also like, you billionaires, you know, we were smart to let you run the country because you're so dense. I guess this is about like the working class versus the elite class, but
what's strange
didn't really come through at any other time.
No, and not only that, again, how does Alec Baldwin represent the working class? And if Anthony Hopkins' character is representing the elite, he's representing them in like the best way possible. Is being like really
philanthropic man
who's like actually knowledgeable. Like he's not a billionaire because he inherited money. He's actually like knows all these things, and so it really did seem like there was a little bit of like a mistaken identity. I think
they like jammed that in there. It really didn't track. And his whole thing is that I'm more than my money. Everyone thinks I'm just my money, and he proves himself in the wilderness like time over time over time. Except for the compass thing, which was kind of weird.
An interesting
that was
botch.
Strange. It was like he botched this thing that was actually pretty devastating. But also there's a kind of they're about to do this, and then the bear shows up, and then they're back where they started, or they're about to do like it's very. and then this, and then like red herrings almost. I don't know
Yeah.
what the
When we talk about Baldwin's sort of stance on billionaires, is that a rationalization? Is that what he's doing? Is he trying to rationalize killing this person
this
or
is why I
villainizing
should
him?
kill you.
If that's the case, I just don't know that it's super successful. And
Yeah.
I think it could have been done in a different way. It doesn't seem like Alec Baldwin is trying to convince himself of something. It absolutely seems like he authentically believes what he's saying.
Yeah.
It has ideas. I don't think that it discusses those ideas as
No.
thoroughly as it could, and I don't think it knows what it wants to say about those ideas.
Right.
On that note, what would you give it?
Yeah, I'd give it like a 5.
A 5. All right.
It's gonna be a low final score, I know, but like it is an entertaining movie. It's good for what it is.
So I personally really like this rubric because it shows us like we can enjoy a movie a lot, but that doesn't mean that it's really that great, and vice versa. We can dislike a movie, but also really kind of pinpoint its strengths and see that maybe it's better than we're giving it credit for. Matt Somerstein gives The Edge's plot a 7, the characters and performances a 6.5, the visual storytelling an 8, the use of sound an 8, and the theme a 5. That gives us a total score of 69.
That's low.
That's
I would
low.
say that the characters and the acting is better than that because I do think when it's good, it is really good.
You know, when your plot kind of has some holes in it and your characters and performances aren't as developed as they should be and your themes are lacking, you can have a really technically strong movie, but it is going to bring it down. So that's a 69. Do you want to? I mean, that's a D. Do you
I would
want to
give
leave
it
it
a, I would give it a
Do you
C
wanna give
plus.
it a C?
I would give it a C plus.
C plus.
I give it a C.
A C. We're locking it in, not a C plus.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to reveal now.
Oh God.
I gave the plot an 8 to your 7, so not much different. Because I did feel like the plot was entertaining. It did have holes. It was a little silly, but I didn't really find it predictable at any point. The characters and performances, I also gave it a 6.5, so no real explanation needed there. Visual storytelling, also gave it an 8, just like you. Use of sound, I gave it a 7, whereas you gave it an 8. I thought it was really effective. I just didn't think, again, it really did anything more than it had to do.
Caliber.
Well, no, hey, look, that's for you to decide. And then the themes, I gave it an 8, which I think is maybe a little bit stronger. As I've talked about in other reviews, I feel like for a movie to get a 10 out of 10 for theme, the movie has to, in and of itself, be an example of the theme. I don't know that The Edge would be able to achieve that, but I do think the themes are very strong. They're very apparent. They do drive the movie forward, but they ultimately are sort of unsatisfying. So, I feel like I might be a little bit kind there, but I did give it an 8. That brings my overall score to a 75. I ended up giving the movie a B minus. You gave it a C. I think that averages out to a C plus. I think that's a fair grade.
That's fair for The Edge.
I don't think that's. Let us know in the comments if you're a big Edge head. But let us know in the comments. Leave a like if you haven't. Matt, I know this is your first time on the show. I want to let you know that we actually have a merchandise page.
Oh.
Yeah, and so before you leave, you should check out the merch page. Maybe pick up a few things.
Is it in the description of the video?
And yeah, that's and for whatever reason, if you're just hearing this and you don't have a link, just go to redbubble.com, search Platinum Plastic. You're going to see it there.
Oh,
but otherwise, Matt, enough about that. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast to watch The Edge and to discuss it with you.
Thank you so much.
You're in the Lion's Den now.
Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Domonic Smith graded Anaconda a 60 in C to my 32 in D with a C- average of 46. Jimmy the Toucan scored The Revenant a 90 and an A to my 97.5 in A+, with an average of 93.75 and an A, making it the highest scored film on today's show. Finally, The Edge scored a 69 and a C from Matt Somerstein and a 75 and B+ from me with a 72 and C+ average. I would love to know your score, so please tell me what you graded each film in the comments. I want to thank Domonic Smith, whose social links and websites can be found in the episode description. You can support Jimmy the Toucan by following our YouTube channel and leaving a kind comment, and follow Matt Somerstein on your favorite platforms now to see his hilarious work. Join us next time on episode 10, Franchise Foundations. Post Wrestling's Neil Flanagan returns to score Shrek. Sid the Cinema Sloth and I talk Fast and the Furious. And Marvel Comics aficionado W.H. Park debuts to grade 2008's Iron Man. Thanks to the team at Real Digital for producing this episode, and Platinum Plastic, who supplies our show's merchandise on redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, you might as well, and subscribe to the channel, as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops twice a week. Thanks for listening, and if you're gonna talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
Yeah! You're goddamn right. Today, I'm gonna kill the motherfucker.